Now, following continuing questions over the state of the housing market, the government is thought to be considering delaying the payment of stamp duty to help boost property sales. There have been calls for the duty to be suspended for a limited period to help first-time home buyers.
Stamp duty is charged on a sliding scale. For homes costing between £125,000 and £250,000, it's 1% of the purchase price.
That rises to 4% for houses worth more than £500,000. Last year, the government raised nearly £6.5 billion from stamp duty.
Well, we're joined now in the studio by Andrew Teacher, spokesperson for the British Property Federation, and by Peter Bolton King, Group Chief Executive of the National Association of Estate Agents, who is in our Birmingham studio. A very good evening to both of you. Andrew Teacher, would a break in stamp duty help kickstart the property market?
Well, it would definitely be a welcome boost for home buyers. There's no doubt about that. Anything that saves people money is always a vote winner, I think, particularly where housing is concerned. But I think there's a few cautious caveats that we need to be aware of. And I think the first and most obvious one really is if, you know, for instance, Alice Darling did come out and say, we're going to cut stamp duty on January the 1st, it would probably mean that between now and January the 1st, the market would completely grind to a standstill because people would just be waiting until then. And that could actually have a lot more harmful consequences than positive consequences in the short and medium term.
Before we explore more of that, let's hear Peter's thoughts on the initial premise, the idea that we might put a hold on this, put a holiday, if you like, on stamp duty. Where do you stand?
Yes, I mean, quite honestly, like your other guest there, we for months have been actually saying to the government, look, come on, you've got to do something to help the housing market, to get it moving. And we've indeed been calling for a stamp duty holiday, especially for the first-time buyers. Has to be done as part of a package, I think, but we welcome it. But I also agree that it's all in the detail. And taking what was just said again, when there was a situation where MIRAS, interest rate relief, was said to be altering, the market just sort of totally stopped. And so we would not want a situation like that again. If the government's going to do something, they've got to say almost from midnight tonight. They can't actually put a forward date on it. So I agree with that.
A date in the future is just not an option as far as you're concerned?
It just causes absolute chaos to the market. I mean, as you can imagine, why would anybody want to actually go ahead and buy a property if they know they're going to have a potential saving on stamp duty?
Andrew Teacher, it's very unlikely that that's going to happen, that he's going to announce this at midnight tonight. It will be much more likely in the future, September, October. How damaging will that be?
Well, I mean, I think we need to look at what stamp duty is. I mean, it's a tax on purchases, but it's also a tax which it prevents liquidity. And by that, what I mean is, if you take, for example, if you've got a home with 2 bedrooms that's perhaps worth just under the bracket of what the next level of stamp duty is. So say it's worth 245, just for argument's sake. If you want, for instance, to have another bedroom on that property, and you've got a choice between buying a bigger home and paying a big dose of stamp duty on that next purchase, or spending that money, say, digging out the basement or turning the loft into another bedroom, what are you going to do? Are you going to hand that money to the Treasury, or are you going to spend that money on your existing home? And of course, obviously, it's going to be the latter. And the effect of the stamp duty is it's reducing the number of transactions taking place. It's just not an efficient driver of transactions.
But a pause, though, is that going to achieve anything? It's just going to make people sort of hang off if they think there's one coming, and
well, a pause, as you say, would make no sense. I think, and there's no, Alistair Darling hasn't said that, Caroline Flint hasn't said that. What the Tories have come out and said, what Grant Shapps is suggesting is a total break on stamp duty for first-time buyers, which obviously makes a lot of sense for them. But I think what we need to actually be doing is look at things in the wider context of where we are with housing. The government is still pledging to build 3 million new homes. People still are unable to get on the housing ladder. And rather than be focusing solely on sort of small issues, we need to actually look at how this situation can be turned on its head to actually help everybody. And one of the main things that the British Property Federation wants to see is actually the government deliver a branded rental sector. We want to see new money coming in to build new homes that are affordable, and actually changing the stamp duty rules to make it easier and, more importantly, to make it fairer for big investors to come in, and build new homes, that would actually help. So that's how stamp duty actually could be changed for the good of everybody.
You will not be surprised to hear, both of you, that we've had quite a lot of correspondence about this. Can we explore a few of these emails with, well, first of all with you, Peter Bolton King. Let me put this one to you. It's a fairly typical example of the kind of dilemma that people are facing here. Mark Phillip in Portsmouth writes, I'm about to buy a £265,000 house. I'm worried that if I go ahead now, I will have lost out on £8,000, or if I wait, I could lose the house that I want.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what both of us have just been saying, which is why, quite honestly, it is fairly frustrating that the government come out and just make a statement without any background information. As you said earlier, are they actually going to defer things, or is it actually a tax break? I can't see any point in deferring somebody's tax payment because they'll be worrying about when they're going to pay it. I think I have to come back to it's exactly the same question. Do I buy now, or do I wait and see if house prices come down? And my golden rule on this is that you can't be too sort of finite about it. If you see a property that you like the look of and it's the one you want, I shouldn't worry too much about whether or not it's going to come down or a few more thousand, or if you're going to spend a few thousand on stamp duty, because your other guest was saying there, new homes are running into a big problem. Almost none are currently being built. There's a complete slow up on that. So the government's housing target has been knocked out of the window for new homes. So if you find the right property, then prices are going to come back up when we bottom out this problem, and I'd go ahead now.
OK, let me read this one to you, which raises another issue of perhaps another measure which might happen. We don't know. Jay Sawyer of Stroud in Gloucester says a stamp duty holiday could help in this awful market. Also, take away HIPs for the time being. They're not doing any good to help the market or the vendors. What do you say?
You wouldn't be surprised to know that I totally agree with that.
I thought you might.
I think, as we've discussed before, HIPS is actually coming up to its happy birthday, and not many people are actually going to be singing happy birthday 1 year on. It was meant to speed up the process. It was meant to have information available that would allow a purchaser to make a proper decision before they bought the property. It's quite honestly, what is there is utterly useless, and I have to say, at long last, the government are talking to the stakeholders, and there's a consultation that's just gone out to consider whether, in fact, the HIPs should be altered to include some additional information. Totally agree with that person. Get rid of HIPs.
Andrew Teacher, just another thought from one of our viewers. Colin Tyre from Manchester is asking, why doesn't the Chancellor transfer stamp duty onto the vendor, as they will inevitably have made a profit on the house? Would that do anything at all to benefit the housing market?
I mean, not really. I mean, we can kind of continue speculating on that, but I think none of these things are actually real solutions that are really going to help. I mean, on the HIPs point, I mean, obviously a lot of people are still quite unenamoured, if that's even a word, with HIPs. But the one part of the HIP that is useful, and I think it is worth flagging up, is the energy performance certificate. And we're seeing daily all the news in the papers about fuel prices going up, and whatever problems anybody may have with HIPs. The energy performance certificate is something which needs to be applied. It's a European directive which has to be in place in this country. And I think, if I was buying a new house, I would probably want to know how energy efficient it was. Because, I mean, as we all know, it could be a lovely house, but if you know you're going to be spending 50% more because, the insulation is terrible, or the boiler is really poor, you'd want to know that as a home buyer, and you'd want to know that as someone that's renting a property. So I think it's still important that whatever we do with HIPs, we actually maintain a focus on ensuring that we've got energy efficient buildings.
OK, we've got to leave it there. Andrew Teacher from the British Property Federation, thanks very much to you. And of course, Peter Bolton King in our Birmingham studio, thanks also very much to you.
Yes, thank you both. 20 to 9. Pass rates for hires and standard grading